Welcome to a bigger, bolder, brighter podcast with SunCoast Blinds. Welcome to episode number 1 of the Bigger, Better, Brighter podcast with SunCoast Blinds. I'm Charlie McDermott, the producer of the show, but the most important fact here is that we have the owner, Ben Crotteau. Ben, how you doing?
Doing great. Yourself?
I'm doing terrific, Ben, and congratulations. The toughest episode is always the first one. So this one's just about in the can here. And I think it's the most important one simply because, there are a lot of options out there in the world of blinds and with any product. I've always found that you want a company that is going to provide an awesome service, but always be there for you. And whether you're going to buy for them or from them or buy for them and know that you're going to be there after the fact. And you've been here for quite some time and your family and serving the folks of Southwest Florida. So Ben, let's start first. I know we have listeners who already know you, know your company, but those who don't, fill us in. Tell us about SunCoast Blinds.
Sure. Well, SunCoast Blinds is a locally owned business based in Bonita Springs. We do higher end window fashions, plantation shutters, automated window shadings, basically anything that's going to stop the light or peeping eyes coming into your house. And we try to do it with a little bit of style with today's flair and fashion and your most modern updates. The big thing that's going to differentiate us between some of that competition, some of those things you mentioned on, is just that level of service that we can provide. We've been around since 1992. We've been based in Bonita that entire time, and so we really feel like this is our home, and we try to treat everybody as if it were our own home.
Yeah, and you talk about being involved. I mean, the company has been around since 1992, so you've grown up in the business, right?
Yeah, literally. My mother and father separated, when I was younger. So he came down into Florida and I lived up in Indiana. But, I was coming down to Southwest Florida back in the early 90s, when he started this up, and I'd work all summer long, hanging vertical blinds and mini blinds in banks or people's houses or little condos down in East Naples. It was a different business back then. But yeah, I mean, since I was 13, 14 years old, something like that, I've been doing this in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
So talk about working your way up. I mean, you've done everything in the business, probably including emptying trash cans to the, helping with the install to doing the install. So you've done it all, right?
Well, I think working your way up, it's kind of funny you say that
Yeah.
because, when I was younger, I wasn't as tall as I am now. So my job was literally all the stuff on the floor. So back in the day, you had little chains that you put on the bottom of vertical blinds. Well, that was what I was able to do because I could reach there as easier than anybody else. But I couldn't hang stuff up on tall of the windows. So as I grew up, I literally worked my way up the windows and in the business. So absolutely, it's not just a metaphor; it's a literal translation of how I've grown with the business and with the company.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So obviously you're doing this podcast. You still have the location up in Fort Wayne.
We do. We have a
Yeah.
franchise location. It's a friend of mine's store actually that we got him
Yeah.
going up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So
Yeah.
he has the SunCoast DNA in him up there as well. So it's working out pretty good for him. It's
Yeah.
taken some years, but he's doing pretty good.
Yeah. That's business, right? Yeah. We're all still as business owners looking for that business where you just hit switch and be instantly successful, but it takes a lot of hard work and time, right?
Well, my wife Pernilla, she's in real estate, and with all the real estate memes and so on and so forth that you can get into, one of them I think I remember was somebody's not willing to work 6 months for free to try and fulfill their dream, but they'll quit that job and go back to work at McDonald's for $15 an hour. I mean,
Yeah.
the math doesn't make sense. You've got to put in the time to get somewhere. And being at it for as long as we have, we're at a point where we've got an established customer base, we've got an established reputation. People know who we are. Some people would think that's a blessing, but it's a lot of work to continue to maintain who you've been to all these people for all this time and continue at that level of service and execute. So, we didn't hit switch on, but every day we come and you got to turn that switch on and you got to perform for every single one of your clients because I had some clients in the showroom today. It's the first time they bought window treatments in 20 years. I can be that touch point person one time in 20 years for somebody. I mean, how many things do you buy with 20-year intervals? So it's a very
Yeah.
important decision-making process that can have a generation of impact for your house, which,
Yeah.
kind of overstating it, but you get the point.
And you mentioned the showroom. I mean, you guys have such a neat showroom right there on Bonita Beach Road, and I know you do both. Clients can come into the showroom, or you can actually go to the home or the office, right?
Yeah, so it's almost a 50-50 split with my
Yeah.
day as far as the schedule goes. I mean, some people look at our website and see we're only open till 1. Well, it's true. So the showroom here is open till 1 weekdays. And then after that, it's not go home and have a beer. It's, go out and see clients and go to the homes, do the measures, do the designs, and do those sort of things. So it's you got your first half a day, you can come here and see me. Second half a day, I'm gonna come and see you.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
And
So, oh, go ahead.
gentlemen first.
Yeah. Jeez, thanks. I haven't been called that in a while. I was going to get into, so you've got obviously the Southwest Florida market, but Florida's a big state. We have a big country, last time I heard. Yet you're doing this podcast, and we talked about this off mic to help a lot of folks because, uh, at the end of the day, it's all about giving back. I mean, I love you. If not all of our listeners can see what's behind you there, change your thoughts, and you've changed your world. And I love that about you and Pernilla. Man, you're just you have a let me put it this way: you operate in a higher elevated universe. Is that a good way to put it? It's not all about the me, me, me. It's about how can I help people, and I think that speaks volumes to what you're doing. But I'm going to ask you, why the podcast?
Um, I think the cheap generic answer is get the word out there, but it's much more than that. And like you want to going back to that client, literally, I came in today, the first time in 20 years. You're going to run into people who don't necessarily want to become window treatment experts to buy a couple of plantation shutters or buy a shade in their windows, but they want to be comfortable with that person, understand that that person, be it in me, is an expert enough at what we do that you can trust what we're saying, know that there's a difference. I don't want to beat down on China, but there's a huge China market for window fashions, and it is sub tier, right? But
Mm.
it looks very similar to some of the stuff that we're going to put out there. There's a huge gap in the quality difference between those two, and somebody might not realize those things for 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years when the deterioration starts to happen. So, do you trust who to give you the information? Well, it's
Yeah.
somebody that's been around, that's accountable, that's local, that studies and knows the difference. I've got vendors that don't know the difference between product A and product B, and that's what they're out there trying to give to guys like me. So you've got to find somebody who you trust to filter through those processes. And if it's a podcast, if it's an advertisement, if it's a letter we send you in the mail, whatever that way is for us to reach you, it's less about advertising for you to get our business. It's more about advertising to build that trust that we're not going anywhere. We're right here and we know the difference. You don't
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's huge. Which then leads me to the next question, which is, what do you have in mind? Future episodes. What are you going to share with your listeners?
Well, we'll see what the demand is here. We're going to get all this feedback. They're going to be sending us emails and letting the listeners tell us what they want to hear
Love
about.
it.
But I think some of the more interesting stuff that somebody would want to get through is basic design. Our basic concepts of why we put certain things in certain windows. Getting on some education on the materials that we would prefer to put in people's windows, and of course some of the things that we absolutely won't do. It's not uncommon for me to, you can read my reviews, it's not uncommon for me to tell a client no, because I'm not going to make them the same mistake 3 times. I might make it twice, but I'm going to try not to make it that third time. And so I think in the future we can look forward to some of that, less about me, less about the company, more about the specific products and the reasons why you would do one versus the other or these two instead of those three, that sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
think that could be very helpful. Listen for a potential consumer.
Love it. Love it. Ben, I think you did it. First podcast in the can. Congrats.
Cha-ching.
Well, you're awesome. We will see you in episode number 2 real soon.
Number 2, see you then. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks for listening to a bigger, bolder, and brighter podcast with SunCoast Blinds. To learn more about our company or our products, go to suncoastblinds.com. Call 239-495-6558 or stop by our studio at 3634 Unit A, Bonita Beach Road, Bonita Springs, Florida.